nonprofit affordable housing development, architecture, and property management firm. This is a development of ours that we completed just a couple of years ago. If you all don't have a fact sheet yet, maybe raise your hand. If someone's held on to a stack, let's make sure they get around. Any extras? If not, if people could so kindly share, that would be great. So you're on an aspirational schedule today, so I'm going to try and stay brief so we can get you back on and keep you to schedule. I might use a lot of terminology that for me is just normal nomenclature, but if I say something that doesn't quite you understand, just stop me, raise your hand, I'll try and make sure I'm using more lay terms. So this development, I'll just kind of focus on some of the unique aspects of it. It's, I'll have to cheat myself to see, remind myself how many units it is. 50 units, affordable housing. And it's unique because we did this in conjunction with Los Angeles Unified School District. This property and the property immediately adjacent to us here where this colorful wall is, was just a surface parking lot that was utilized by the school district for an elementary school that's across the street that way. Our trade association, SCAMP, the Southern California Association of Nonprofit Housing, and I think co-sponsor of this tour, many years ago started talking to the school district about the fact that they had a lot of underutilized land, and there was a perfect opportunity there for affordable housing developers and the school district to think about ways to utilize that land for low-income families. This was the very first project that came out of that initiative, and I think there have been 4 since, and we are doing one of the other 4 in Hollywood. So it's been a successful, replicable model, I would say. Some of the, is there a question? Some of the things that are unique is, as I mentioned, this property was owned by LA Unified School District. So they basically donated it to the project so that we could then not have to pay for the cost of the land. It's through what's called a carryback note, and it's soft payments on that. So there is a loan documentation around it, but the actual hard debt service is $0 per year. So it really helped us finance the project. We also work closely with them and their designers to develop this brand new early education center that went in at the same time as this development. We originally had vision for this being a more cohesive design with maybe a ground floor early education center, housing above, a lot more open space, but we quickly learned that a nuance of California, at least, is that the state governs architecture for schools, whereas the local government governs it for housing. So we were getting into a lot of challenges with mixing nomenclature and mixing requirements, and if one was going to taint the other and vice versa. So it wasn't the design we originally envisioned, but we still feel like we got a pretty decent, cohesive design out of this development. There's some shared elements of this still, though. The schoolyard, which is right now being used by the Early Education Center, is available to our tenants evenings and weekends. And then the community room, which we'll go through, but we can't all be there at the same time, I'm afraid, is used for our after-school programming that we do ourselves. But then it's also a teacher-parent conference room, so it's available to the school. And so we have a committee that works together to coordinate the timing and scheduling of this space. In addition to the community room, we have on-site laundry, we have a computer lab, and if we're able to, I'd like to take you up to one of our kind of open areas. It has a really lovely view of the Hollywood Hills and the Griffith Park Observatory, some iconic parts of Los Angeles. I'm trying to be brief. That's kind of the big picture. Before we start walking, does anybody have any kind of big picture questions or something that I glossed over that you're particularly interested in?
Will we be able to see an apartment?
We did not arrange for viewing a unit today. I'm sorry. I didn't realize that would be part of the request.
How long did
There's
it
other
take
sites
you,
we'll get to see them.
Okay.
how long did it take you to get from having the idea to having the completed development?
It was a long time. So the question is how long from kind of concept to actual development. There was a lot of time working with the school district and the affordable housing community to really understand how we were different as much as how we were the same and coming to some common terms around that. They made the site available through a request for proposal, so there was a competitive process to win the site. Then once we won the site, there was a very lengthy and protracted, I'd say, negotiation around the terms of the development agreement and the ground lease that governs the ownership of the land. And the good news is that everybody understood it was difficult and hard, and we were doing something that hadn't been done before, so it took a long time. But everybody, the school district, Abode Communities, we remained committed to the vision of this, and we all understood that this was really groundbreaking and that it was worth that protracted time. So I would say from getting, the initial concept to breaking ground was probably a good 6 or 7 years, but the subsequent projects that the school district has made available have been on a much more normal time frame.
Because you've done other on the school district, or this is just
This is the only school district we've done.
you've done?
Yes.
Is this rental?
Yeah, the question is rental property. Yes, so it's subsidized housing, and the subsidy we get are tax credits, low-income housing tax credits from the federal government, which basically bring a large slug of equity from an investor who wants those tax credits. That constitutes about 60% of our financing. The balance of the financing is through a traditional mortgage, and then we have some state and local financing, home dollars, which you may or may not know about, as well as some ARA money, which was the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act funds. All of that went into the capital stack of developing the building, and then we have restricted rents. So people, it's restricted to people who make between 30 and 60% of area median income for Los Angeles County, and their rent is calculated based on what that published 30 to 60% AMI is.
Would you say it is below market?
How much below? Well, market is not necessarily 100% AMI, but if you use 100% AMI as market, it's somewhere between 70 to 40% below market.
What is the average now for a one-bedroom in Los Angeles?
Tricky question. So the question is, what's basically the market for one bedroom and what is it here? So we have multiple, I don't know if we have one bedrooms here, I think we have 2s and 3s, but the question's still the same. Our rents range probably anywhere from about $400 a month up to, say, $1,200 a month, depending on household size and depending on which area median income folks are. So anywhere in that range. I see micro units in Little Tokyo, which I think you're going to be driving through today, north of $2,000 a month. So I don't know if I'm giving you the hard cold facts about averages, but
Why people from other parts of the country need to know that $2,000 a month is pretty normal
yeah.
for a one-bedroom in Los Angeles.
Is there anyone here from Boston? No? I'd say the what's that? The Boston market, I think, is pretty comparable. Seattle market's pretty comparable. New York is probably astronomically higher than anybody else. San Francisco is slightly higher, but we're right in that mix of kind of where that disparity between where the market is and what's available to hardworking families is really crazy. There's a great fact sheet that Jill should follow up for you with, which goes over how many hours at a minimum wage job an average household would have to work to afford the typical 2-bedroom apartment. And you basically would have to have 3 adults working 2 full-time jobs. It's totally unachievable.
Is Abode Communities a faith-based nonprofit?
We are not faith-based, though. We grew out of the civil rights movement as a pro bono architecture firm and the design center movement, and that's kind of where we get our history from.
My reason for asking is, would a faith-based nonprofit have a difficulty doing what you did because they are faith-based?
No, well, we are in collaboration with Mercy Housing, and they're faith-based. They started out the Daughters of Charity and the Catholic system. There are other Southern California Presbyterian Homes, who now goes by a different name. There are plenty of what I'll say faith-based in their Genesis organizations that maybe over time have evolved into really focus more on development, but their mission, their roots are still faith-based, and they do plenty of work, and they're great organizations. I'll say this, you're going to see a lot of great groups today, a lot of great developments, and the one thing I can say we have going for LA is it's a really friendly, competitive environment where I think most if not all players are really great.
So working with the government wouldn't be a negative.
I can't speak for the government.
No,
it's always a negative working with the
government. What you've seen with other nonprofits that you collaborate with that are faith-based, you don't really see it being a negative.
I don't see them having a challenge. I do say though, like Mercy Housing, they are an independent 501c3. They are not the church.
Right.
So that is how there's a distinction, And there's a couple of kind of complicated tax reasons for doing that, but I used to work there many years ago, and I'd say mission-wise and culture-wise, they are definitely still embrace their kind of foundation.
Okay,
Do you have
thank
a waiting list, and how long do people typically live here?
We definitely have a waiting list at every single one of our properties, and to the point where we close waiting lists. I would say this building opened in 2013, I think, 11. I would say there are probably some households that still were the original households here. Our senior properties, we definitely have a lot longer tenancy of the same household than in our families. But, you know, I've gone to some properties where the families live there for 10, 15 years to the point where they're actually able to see their children off to college, first time going to college.
So let me stop the questions here.
Okay.
Okay. If we were supposed to actually leave now to go to our next stop, so I'm contacting them so we can leave a little bit later. But as much as I'd love to keep questions going, we can't. And so let's
Do a
just
quick
do a
spin
very
through
quick spin
the
and then get
development. Okay.
immediately back on the bus.
So